You have failed. You have not done a good job running this country. You don't even care to try. You'd rather run the world or the empire. You don't want to improve Baltimore. You don't care about Gary, Indiana. Rural America makes you sick.
Wow, that was Tucker Carlson talking about Donald Trump. He didn't say his name, but it was very obvious that that's who he's referring to. Who else is running the country, right? And
the empire.
Yeah, he's obviously empirically correct about that. Although AOC was asked about him a little bit later, would we be better off with Donald Trump as president or Tucker Carlson? In fact, we have that poll up on TYT.com. We're gonna show you her answer in a minute, but Tucker was talking to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and let me give you more of that conversation to show you how disgusted Tucker Carlson is with Donald Trump, and Marjorie Taylor Greene totally agreed with everything he's saying. So it's an amazing new world we live in. Watch.
Normal leaders would ask themselves, why are people mad? What are they dissatisfied with? How can I help them? They're clearly in pain. They should have asked this question when Trump got elected the first time. Why would you elect an orange guy who ran casinos in Atlantic City when there are all kinds of great candidates? Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz, you had a lot to choose from, but you chose Trump? A normal reflective person would reach the only conclusion possible, which is because they're dissatisfied with me. And maybe I need to change and serve their needs better and listen to them once in a while and not dismiss them with the back of the hand or charges of bad motives or hate or censorship. They've never looked inward once in 10 years, and now they've reached the point of a maximum frustration where the biggest thing they've ever done, which is try to regime change the Iranian government, and it hasn't worked. That's the biggest thing they've ever done. They staked everything on that. And you should just know that at this point, now that that's not working out, they will not be mad at themselves. They're going to be mad at you for not liking it or appreciating it or for talking about it at all, or for holding on to your outdated expectations about what life in this country was like then and should be now.
So there's a lot we don't agree with Tucker Carlson on. We do agree with him these days on the war, Israel, and genocide. But Ryan, we just did a story about the Democratic Party where we sounded an awful a lot like Tucker and Marjorie Taylor Greene as they talked about the Republican Party. Isn't that an interesting mirror image?
Yes, I mean Tucker. I listened to your interview on there too. Tucker has been on a very interesting journey of introspection, and I hope people are open to it. Doesn't mean you have to like everything he said in the past or agree with everything that he's saying now. That would be weird if you did. But man, can you disagree with any of that right there? And I didn't actually see what AOC said about whether it would be better Tucker or Trump, but to me, it's not even remotely close. I can't think of anybody worse that we could have than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Maybe out of 300 plus million people in the country.
I totally agree. Actually, let me show you that clip first, and then we'll come back and discuss it. So TMZ, I believe, caught up with AOC, and they asked her that question. Let's watch.
Hey, if you could click your fingers and Tucker Carlson is president instead of Donald Trump, would you do it?
I don't know. I don't think so, but it's kind of a toss-up. I'm not really sure.
Ryan, she's not sure, because even if you grant that Tucker has the same positions as Trump outside of the war, Israel, and genocide, war and genocide and American sovereignty are rather gigantic issues. So they're not asking her, do you like Tucker? Would you vote for Tucker? Right. Would you vote for Tucker over Bernie? They're not asking any of that. Tucker versus Trump. My sense of it is that she didn't want to answer because she thought it was too politically risky. If she says anything nice at all about Tucker Carlson, there is a portion of the left that'll take her head off.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right. And I think also, if you answer it, you get a headline out of it. AOC says Tucker should be president rather than Trump. Whereas if you kind of just sit on the fence about it, then there's no headline, just a viral video going around. But yeah, I think intellectually and politically and substantially and morally, if on the things that he agrees with Trump, you already have Trump. On the things he disagrees with Trump, he's better than Trump. So it's the world is net better off, obviously. But yeah, I think your political calculations right there. But even on immigration, Tucker's been hard line on immigration, and especially like when he was on Fox News. But he was critical, pretty severely critical of the way that Stephen Miller was carrying it out, the killings of Alex Peretti, killing of Renee Good, like that was a line that he didn't want to cross. You could say, okay, well, you voted for this, you enabled this, your rhetoric supported this, and I think he would probably say you're right, and I'm sorry for that. So at that point, you're like, okay, you know what? If these are my two choices, Trump or this guy, I'm going with the guy who says he's sorry for that, not the guy that says he wants to do more of it, but he's just because he had to pull out of Minneapolis because it was just a little bit too embarrassing that they kept killing Americans.
Yeah, I think there's a hidden huge phenomenon going on here, Ryan, that people aren't talking about because they're so obsessed with binary brain. It's partisan politics, and we hate Tucker. We're always going to hate Tucker. Look, he has opinions on sexism, on LGBTQ issues, immigration, and you're deeply uncomfortable with those. That makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. That's still true. Okay, but why is he turning like this against war and in favor of American sovereignty? And even on ICE, to Ryan's point.
Look, one of the biggest problems with political media right now isn't just bias. It's how quickly the same story gets spun into two completely different realities depending on who's telling it. That's why I recommend Ground News. It's a website and app that pulls together reporting from across the political spectrum so you can compare how the same story is being covered, who's covering it, and what kind of narrative they're pushing. Take this story about Pete Hegseth refusing to rule out US troops on the ground in Iran. On Ground News, you can immediately see how differently outlets frame that same development. The Daily Signal downplays the danger by stressing that this isn't Iraq and that the war won't be endless. NBC, meanwhile, focuses on the key fact that Hegseth would not rule out American boots on the ground in Iran. Same story, two completely different realities. And Ground News makes that obvious right away. You can compare headlines side by side, see the bias distribution of the coverage, check the factuality ratings of the sources, and even see who owns the outlets behind the reporting. That matters because once you understand how stories are being framed, you start to see how public consent gets manufactured. Ground News also has a blind spot feed that highlights stories that one side of the political spectrum is barely covering. So you're not just trapped inside the version of the world your algorithm wants to feed you. If you're tired of being fed somebody else's narrative, I genuinely recommend Ground News. Go to ground.news/TYT or scan the QR code. Using our link gets you 40% off Ground News Vantage plan, and you can also gift a subscription directly through Ground News.
I was on Sean Ryan's podcast, another giant podcaster who's on the right. Although these days he even chafes at being called on the right, and he, when we started talking about ICE, I mean, of course he agreed 100% on Israel and the wars. I say, of course, about a right-wing guy who supported Donald Trump. Of course, he hates Trump on war and Israel and all that, right? But on ICE, he basically said they were cowards. You don't shoot a woman in the head like that. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he's like, this is not the right way to go about things. And Ryan, I think what's happening and what a lot of us on the left are missing, because we've been taught and trained to hate everyone on the other side and shut off our minds. Don't even listen to them. I don't want to hear it, right? Is that it's their audiences that are pushing them to have the same positions as us on these super important issues.
Yes, I think that's really well said. They're not talking about anybody individually here, but in general, yeah, these are not people that are like out there taking tons of risks. They're very closely following where their audiences are on those issues, and that should be gratifying to people who want those audiences to feel that way and then want people to come this way. As you remember back in the 2020 campaign, who did Joe Rogan endorse for president? Bernie Sanders. So it's not strange that the entire kind of ecosystem organized around, aligned with like the Joe Rogan world, believes in the vaguely the kind of things that Bernie Sanders wants for the world. Like that's kind of where they were. As soon as Rogan did that, he got called a transphobe and a racist and all these other things, and you started to see the kind of them push off into the kind of far right. But that didn't have to happen. It wasn't natural. So it's not crazy that those podcast folks, could wind up in a more just social democratic, common sense, like we're all in this together sense of humanity.
Yeah, so again, patient zero here. I said as soon as Trump won that the independent podcasters like Rogan, Andrew Schultz, Tim Dillon, Theo Von were not MAGA cult guys. They were not Republicans. They were not ditto heads. And that if Trump did things that were against what he said, that they would turn on him. And at the time, everybody said, you're a lunatic. That's never, ever going to happen. They're all in a cult. They all repeat exactly what Trump said. But Ryan, even I'm surprised that it's not just the independent guys. Tucker Carlson's a right winger. I mean, Sean Ryan is on the right, brother. I mean, I know he doesn't want to say, but he is, right? And Megyn Kelly. This is going so much deeper than people realized. And that's because in online media, people reward outsiders. And in television, they reward insiders. So because of the very fact that they're in online media, not only are the independent podcasters going, yeah, sure, Bernie, why not? I want outsiders. I don't want insider scum, right? I don't want the elite jerks who've been robbing us and for my entire life. I want outsiders like Bernie, or they made the mistake of thinking Trump. And so as long as we're in the online media world, I think that these politicians are in way bigger trouble than they realize, whether it's Donald Trump or Chuck Schumer. And they keep thinking they live in the old world. Donald Trump keeps going, yeah, but Mark Levin agrees with me. Fox News agrees with me. And he's finding that rather useless, isn't he?
Yes, I was just looking at, and I think Glenn had posted this, and I was looking at the Free Press's like YouTube audience, and Glenn pointed out Mark Levin's YouTube audience. Some of these, like a lot of the Mark Levin videos are getting triple-digit viewers, like 722 people. And I think he's on Saturday evening or something on Fox. Like with that audience, that is people forced to watch. Like you are captive. You're in a home. You're in an airport. Like whatever. Like nobody's turning that on at that time. And so yeah, there's no organic, natural audience for that. And I think the same is true kind of for the Democratic establishment at this point. Like Janet Mills, for instance. Like there's no. Like, if people think that Janet Mills is going to be the horse they have to ride to beat Susan Collins, then they're in and they'll ride that horse. But there's no actual like excited base of grassroots support for what Janet Mills herself affirmatively stands for. And once the money isn't important, the big money isn't important because you can match it with small dollars, then what is even the point of those people? And once people are getting now it's at like 50-50. TV, broadcast, cable versus independent YouTube podcasts, but the lines on the graph are clear. Like it's not peaking at 50. That they're a fading power, and that's why they're trying to buy everything up, buy up TikTok, buy up everything else. So you absolutely can't count big money out. But right now they're in a fight for their lives.
And I love to see it. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.